saying that, I wanted to start with the topic of today, which is, as Moju mentioned, is about neuroprotection and how we can, for example, take a little of this weight that we have in the end of the year out and enjoy a little more, even though that we can have different beliefs or I don't know, understandings actually, even of reality. These things are horizontal, like we can feel better and everybody can have a certain level of contribution when we support in the field of neuroprotection the people that is interested on it. Okay, in this context, I wanted to say also that even though that I did my PhD, for example, years ago in genome science, I'm not here to give a talk or a lecture in biology or genetics. The idea is that we have a very practical approach to certain habits or activities that can help us to improve our well-being in general. Okay, then I will, as I said, I was going to give you, of course, a brief introduction that we are, the most of us here, more or less, are maybe researchers or scientists that are interested also in this, and that's why I'm going to give a little background. However, again, as I said, it will be very practical. Okay, in the context of the emotional paradox, as I mentioned, is why in the end of the year, in the most of the part of the world, of course, I don't want to say in the 100% of the part of the world, but in the areas we are, is a season of celebration. And this sometimes for people that we are, for example, I'm a foreigner myself, that we came from far away or different part of the world, it's very difficult sometimes in the first years actually to visit your family or to come back just for certain seasons like holidays or maybe New Year. And that's why, first of all, it's really important to normalize these feelings. It will be weird actually if we didn't expect or didn't feel anything when we are far away from home or our friends or our network. That's why it's very important that this kind of emotional dissonance that we perceive sometimes, that the environment is happy, everybody's kind of the mood of celebration, this is completely normal. And that's why also when we feel tired or we feel like cognitive fatigue, this is a really kind of normal expressions of stress in high levels that producing this kind of overcome energy in our organism. That's why I wanted to start just to mention this. Like it's nothing to be afraid of. It's super normal to experience all these kind of feelings during this season. At the same time, as I mentioned before, stress shape of brains. There are things that we can hear constantly about, like how different environments could affect our brains. However, I wanted to give you like a brief just touches of the things that currently in research are kind of clear. For example, that the stress activate the amygdala and reduce the prefrontal regulation, reduce the capacity that we have to solve problems. That's why sometimes when we are overcome with duties or different tasks during this season, it's could feel even harder to overcome certain tasks or activities that we need. At the same time, unrelated, chronic stress impair memory and emotional balance via the hippocampal changes. At the same time, increased cortisol, which is well known as the stress hormone. And not minor effects are how these, for example, also affect our attention or also how we perceive the social support that we have. In certain cultures, or for example, I'm from Chile, we said that in this type of situation, we put like the horse view or the horse vision. That is like you just look in front of you, you focus in this kind of problems that you have in front. However, you are not capable in a way to see the different options or the different networks that you have around, even with your friends, with your family, or even colleagues sometimes. However, what is well known and what is one of the main reasons that what we are established this seminar in the context of a workshop is because the research in the last century has been shown, in the beginning has been shown that some very clear activities or habits that we can establish in your daily life will be a contribution to our well-being in general. and will be capable to reduce the stress in these different circumstances, for example, like to reduce the pressure that we feel in the holiday season, as is the context of this. And that's why in the next slides, I will show you, for example, in a very direct way, which are the conclusions that this research has been done in the last century. And what I mentioned this, because many of the things that I'm gonna show you here today, maybe you heard constantly in social media, or maybe you heard some of those with your friends, or maybe in the TV. Even though some of those are very simple and can sound like a straightforward habits, the research every year prove and confirm these results. That's how I call it the neuroprotective trifecta, which are three different aspects of the organism in connection with the environment that we can improve if we focus on it, that we can improve, and this will have a direct effect in our well-being in general, psychologically speaking, but also biologically speaking and socially speaking, the biopsycho connection. And some of you if you want, you can write in the chat just to have an idea. What do you think could be these three aspects that are fundamental that we can improve or we can practice, for example, to try to overcome these different stress loads in a holiday season? Just to have a brief idea of what you think. Just write it in the chat, and maybe Mo, you can tell me what people is writing there to know if we are in the same line.
Regular exercise.
Come on, it's okay, don't be shy. You can write, it's not like right answers or wrong answers.
Deep breathing, gathering, social gathering, communication with others.
Okay, give me just two more. Give me two more people in the audience. Smiling by force.
Smiling by force. Sleep.
Sleep. Yeah. All right. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah, we are not so far of those, but there are three things, as I mentioned it to you, that research has been shown during the last, as again, I like to mention the last century because it's true. Like, it's the last 100 years of research has constantly confirmed this. In the first place, we have, as it was well established there, physical activity. Physical activity has been shown, like, for example, in this case of exercise, reduce the stress by lowering cortisol and enhancing regulation of different hormones in our organism. At the same time, it's increase the brain the neurotrophic factors supporting neuroplasticity and resilience, which is connected with memory consolidation, also retrieval, and also improve mood through endorphins, endocannabinoid signalings. But at the same time, regular activity lowers the risk of depression and anxiety. It's really important to mention, and that's why I'm constantly repeating this, even those that could sound even as a cliche or something that every time we heard in these days, that exercise is good for you. Certainly it is. However, it's also important to know that when I mentioned that you can practice physical activity, that means that you need to be a triathlete, or you need to run a marathon, or you need to even running every day or go to the gym. Research has been very clear to show that just very small physical activities in a way that don't need so much time or a dedication improve your quality of life and reduce stress in different levels. As I said, we can go deeper, I mean, in the biological background or genetics aspect of this. However, that's not the point of the workshop. The key is to understand that very simple habits could contribute to us to improve our well-being in general. And for example, many of the studies that has been done in the last years, I can mention this actually pretty well because for those that are interested, in the next month, it will be published a paper that we wrote with some collaborators in the US, which is a review in the context of physical activity and how this improve well-being in general, reducing, for example, neuropsychiatric disorders and reducing the risk of developing neurodegenerative diseases. And that's why also in that review, again, as I mentioned, we confirm everything that is here mentioned. I forgot actually to say in the beginning, because more you remember me that, and it's like every claim that you can see here in the slides, because I knew we're in the Max Planck, I wanted to be very kind of scientific with this, science with this, and every number that you have there is connected with a quote, with a reference, a scientific paper, that in the end of the presentation, there will be the list of every reference, and then you, if you were interested in one claim in a specific, you just need to remember the number, and then you can see which are the specific paper in the end, and then you can check if I was lying to you, of which this is true and it's based in scientific information. And that's why. Then don't worry, you don't need to take notes of whatever. Also, you can check it later on. Okay, now in the same context, as I talked to you about this neuroprotective trifecta, we have the second one that is really important, that is also was mentioned, as you may know, is sleep. Sleep, as we saw there, support emotional regulation. And specifically, even though that is contribute to all the brain as a whole, in a specific to prefrontal cortex and amygdala balance, in the context of what we are talking, reducing stress. Also, poor sleep increase stress reactivity and negative effect. We know that's a classic, that when someone says like, I don't sleep really well last night, and then you saw they are in a bad mood or something like that, that they can focus on it. All this is part of it. They didn't sleep that reduce cortisol and restore physiological homeostasis, which is like a beneficial effect of it. And adequate sleep lowers risk of anxiety and mood disorders. Something that is constantly mentioned in some of the literature that is studying this in deep. Sometimes, I don't know, it could sound maybe too strong, but it's mentioned that when we don't sleep well, like for example, I will say, in average, 7 hours, I would say. Like, even though that depends on each person in a specific, there are differences, of course. However, I would say in average, we will move between 6 to 8 hours of sleep, depending, as I said, specific differences. However, when we go down of that, if you sleep, for example, one day just 2 hours, or if you speak, I don't know, 5 hours, being completely honest with you, like last night, and that's because in a very a high workload season of my work, I just slept maybe 4 hours, and that's not good. That's how we call it biological suicide, because the impact that the lack of sleep have in our organism as a general, also in learning capacities, is incredible. That's why it's really important, as I mentioned, like, even though that is difficult, I know that I'm not living in a bubble, that we are scientists, that sometimes we need to do things we need to finish things under pressure, or we need to do long time experiments that require that we are always attentive, even though that we don't need to be in the lab. It's important that we try to organize our schedule to have these times of sleep, because it's detrimental. If you don't have it, anything else, it will not work in an effective way. That's why we should put focus on it. Now, saying that physical activity and sleep are fundamental, then we're going for the third. I don't know if someone mentioned it in the chat before, but anyways, the third one that is maybe is not a surprise also is the famous nutrition. Nutrition, as is word here, influence mood through good brain signaling. Omega-3, like, is support neuroplasticity and reduce inflammation. Neuroinflammation, actually, in specific, has been shown in the last years in specific papers. Also, you can check the one that I am noticed there in the quote, that Mediterranean style diets lowers the risk of depression, for example, and also that blood sugar stability improve emotional regulation. However, also we need to be very critical with this in terms of, as a scientist, it's important to be cautious with generalizations. I need to mention that has been a lot of research in this field, and it's really nice and good that we have certain guidance for nutrition, like for example, as I mentioned here, like omega-3 or the Mediterranean style diets. However, as I wanted to say, that it's not that just this type of foods or this type of diets are the ones that will be beneficial for you. I know, and we need to be very aware that we live in a world with countless numbers of different cultures and different ideas or different ingredients and foods, different type of gatherings. And that's why, in a way, we should adapt those ingredients, to say so, to our diets. Which is important to know is like in the base, we need to reduce, and that could sound like an obvious thing, like the classic thing that we heard, but ultra processed food could be not necessarily like a devil or something that you need to avoid completely. I mean, in a way, I wanted to be realistic, and that is why what we saw in research and what we do here also in the department working in Max Planck. We know that the extremes are not used to be the best option. Actually, it's not that you need to just go for example here that I mentioned the Mediterranean style diet. You just go for that. And you say, I'm going to just eat that and I'm never going to break my diet. Nutrition doesn't work like that. Also, that has been shown in the research at the same time that it's not realistic to keep that for for longer periods of time. That's why it's even better when you have a realistic perception of your diet, of your nutrition. And then, for example, people usually, when I'm talking about this, ask me, what about fast food? I can eat fast food. I said, sure. I mean, it's like, as I said, it's the extremes where we are having like the issues of the problem. Research has been shown, for example, that no matter which is the type of food that you have, if it's fast food, for example, during everyday daily life, for sure have negative impact, detrimental impact in your organism. However, in low doses, like for example, I would say, again, important to know that to mention that these are not medical claims that I'm doing. This is like the results of research. And in every time that you would like to establish a specific kind of plan of nutrition, for example, or exercise, it's really important that you have a medical supervision, because also some of the ingredients are not well supported for everybody, or some people need one part of certain ingredients in certain foods or whatever, and that is really critical to understand and have in mind. No, okay, but saying so, what I wanted to just maybe briefly here having an integration is like this trifecta has been shown, as I told you, like every time has been like physical activity, sleep, as I said, like to effective amounts, like in average 6 to 8 hours. And at the same time, a balanced nutrition has a crazy impact. To say some numbers, actually. Lastly, in the 2021 has been a study in the impact of physical activity in neuropsychiatric disorders, has been shown that regular physical activity, and again, as I mentioned, that could be walking, for example, going from 1 to 2K per day, could reduce the risk of developing a neuropsychiatric disorder or major depression in more than 20%, which is insane. I mean, those percentage are not reachable by any medication. You know, that's why I mentioned it to you, before, that even though that some of these things that are numerated with the bullet points in this trifecta, it sounds really kind of obvious or common, are still the ones that are producing the highest impact in our organism. And that's why I wanted to be very repetitive with this, like in the last bullet point that I wrote there, that small but consistent behaviors are the ones that could buffer against not just about this holidays stress season, related season, but for the whole year in general. Also, for example, we live in a country, at least the ones that are based in Germany, where the weather conditions, if you are not used to it, affect in a very, very high level your mental well-being. For example, because of the lack of sunlight. Has been many studies about that, of the lack of vitamin D, for example, and how that could affect your mood. However, if we balance that with balanced nutrition, with regular exercise, and we try to control all sleep, the impact that this negative condition of certain environments, of course, dependent of the person. That's why I say negative. It's not that a country is negative because it has certain weather. I'm just saying, due to the specific condition of a person, when that turns negative due to the environment, as I said, with these very simple but consistent habits, we can contribute to reduce those negative impacts. Now, in the same line that I show you, or I mentioned to you, very practical, like realistic things that you can say, you can do during your daily life, I wanted to give you just very briefly a guidance of some exercises that has been proved also in the research, in the current literature. They are being very effective to reduce, for example, or arousal and stress really fast in situations when it's critical. For example, I wanted to give you this to you as a tools that you can keep with you in every time, every moment, without exception, and free, which is very important. The first one is called calming breath. And it's in parentheses that is low visibility and high impact, because you can perform this everywhere. And it's very, very simple. If you wish, I mean, the ones that have the camera on can turn it off if you want. You just need to feel very comfortable. I will tell you how it is. This is very, very, very simple. Like you would need a minute. For example, that you are in a meeting or you need to go to a meeting, or you have a presentation, or you have a thesis defense, which is crazy stressful, right? Then we just need, we don't have time and you just have a minute. You can choose one of these three practices that I'm going to show you today, okay? We start with this one. The first, as I said, you can just stay in your seat, in your chair, feel like you are in a comfortable posture. Try to don't put anything tense. Like sometimes, even for me, I'm tense all the time. That's what I'm telling you, like you need to put attention that you are not tense. And then we're gonna inhale for 4 seconds, like, and then after that, we're gonna exhale for 6 seconds. We can do it, and I'm gonna count the time. You don't need to count it, but you can practice wherever you are. Like at first, we inhale 4 times, like 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we can go exhale with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Of course, you control how you feel comfortable about. You can repeat this for just around 1 minute. Has been shown that this super simple exercise, like you can inhale for 4 seconds and you exhale for 6 seconds, or even more if you can support it. This, as long as the exhale, has been shown that activate the parasympathetic system and reduce this physiological arousal that we can have do different situations. No, I like to show this because, as I mentioned, and as you can see, it's super simple, and it's just 1 minute. Myself, a person, I'm not need to talk actually to other examples. I can use myself. For me, it's very difficult to calm in those situations because I used to have high levels of anxiety. However, I was very skeptical about this. But then when you practice this constantly, and then it's very kind of your second nature to control those type of breathing when you are in different situations, is incredible, the impact that it can have, and how fast it is, and how free of any chemical or pills of things that you can use. This is completely free and as I said, really fast. Okay. Now we can go for another one. As I said, you can choose which is the one that you will feel more comfortable with. The second is the gentle grounding for presence. That's something that also is good to focus your attention to reduce at the same time the arousal of your of the specific situation. And what that means? That means also very simple, fast, free. First, you can focus in one thing that you can see. Then you need to focus in one thing that you can hear. Probably in this time it will be me, but the thing is, you just need to keep in mind that these things, no, like you need to see something, you need to focus also in something that you can hear at the same time, and one thing that you can touch. For example, can be like that you are grounded in the floor with your feet, or you can feel the back in the chair, or also the seating or the bottom. I don't know. You need to have something that you can experience the feeling of touching, of that feeling of sensation. Then I can help you to do this, like wherever you are, like we can try together if you are agree. We can focus this attention for more or less 5 to 7 seconds in each of this process. Now you can focus in something. You need to see something. Just stay with that for a few seconds. See that thing that you are focused on. See it. Try to just see that thing. Now, try to hear something. Even if maybe you are in another environment when you can listen the clock, or maybe it's even low music around, or you can listen someone working outside, or your colleagues in the next door. I don't know. But the idea is that you don't dissociate from the stimulus. Now I'm explaining it like this, like step by step. However, as I mentioned in the beginning, we need to focus in that thing that we see for these few seconds, then in the sound that we are hearing for a few seconds, and lastly, in the thing that we are touching for a few seconds. If we repeat that in a moment of high stress, I mean, sometimes people ask me, I just remember this, like what I can do if I'm in a situation where I need to be, it's stressful, but I need to be active. Okay, these are not exercises for those type of situations. These exercises are being described in the literature to reduce the arousal, as I mentioned, of stress, and to try to give it this calm and try to prepare us super fast for situations that we need to confront. Can even be, for example, important conversation that we need to have with someone. We can practice some of these very, very simple exercises. As I said, just to go back again really fast, we can focus in something that we see, then we focus in something that we can hear, we are listening, and then we focus in something that we are touching at that moment. And we cross for each of these sensory experiences. You give them like 10 seconds to each. And then in that moment, you will experience a reduction of arousal. Again, if I chosen these specific activities, is because even though sounds super simple, are super effective. And myself, as I told you, everything that I'm showing here, I'm practicing about it. And I believe it as one that I follow this kind of plan and habits, for example, that I mentioned. Okay, then the micro self-compassion for difficult moments. This is quite common, actually. I'm saying common in the way that could make sense for many of us in the field of academia, which is quite tough sometimes, right? This micro self-compassion for difficult moments has been also in research described to be able to modulate in a way, actually, the neural activity. And it's insane how effective it is when we have this positive thinking. And that's why also I consider this practice really important to mention here for you. And what that means, this micro self-compassion, even though sometimes we can feel that we are tough to the different experiences that life has been, that life show us or confront us, and then we needed to have this kind of shell of protection. Like I can be very autocritic with this and mention, for me, sometimes it's difficult to have this kind of positive thinking towards me. That's why I wanted to show you here that with 3 different phrases, very simple phrases, some studies has been shown that could affect your neural activity immediately. One of those is First, the recognition of the acknowledgement of the experience. You should mention this is an exercise that also requires a minute. Each of the exercises that I mentioned to you is a minute. Imagine if you do the 3, you need 3 minutes. I mean, amazing. Like this self-support, micro self-compassion start with the acknowledgement of the experience. You said, okay, this is a moment of stress. Like that, you know, you can say it in your mother language tone, of course, then this is a moment of stress. And then this acknowledgement produces immediately a focus in the neural activity. I'm explaining it like that just to make it easier than explanation. It's not that it's working like that exactly at the brain level, no. And the second is to realize that stress is part of the human experience. That is also the second acknowledgement that we need to make. Stress is part of the human experience, which it will normalize the activity, okay? And the third is, may I be kind with me at this moment? Or you can simplify to say, I need to be kind, I should be kind with me in this moment. And you reflect with that just for a few seconds. I'm not saying that we are gonna have here, as I mentioned to you before, it's just a few seconds of each of these reflections. However, the impact that has been shown in the current research is enormous. And that's why I mentioned it to you here again, is the micro self-compassion. You can just go to the bathroom. If you are in the elevator, if you are walking, you can practice this. And again, this is a moment of stress. Then allow the acknowledgement of the experience. Critical, very important. Second of all, the stress is part of the human experience. Of course, that is normal, and we need to acknowledge that too. And third, but not less important, is may I be kind with myself. I should be kind. I need to treat me with more love. Those three things has proven to show an improvement in the mood of a person just in a few seconds. And that's why this in combination, the three practices that I show you, I can guarantee, no matter what, no matter how accepted you are, if you practice this different, I will give you back just to show you. If you practice a calming breath, if you practice a gentle grounding for presence, and if you practice these micro self-compassions, this could be of enormous contribution for your well-being. And it's something actually that is important to mention, that it's not something that you should do or you can do in a stress situation, no? I mean, this is something that you can practice in your daily life before you go out of your house. If you practice these three different exercises, for example, and that could make a great impact in your routine and how you start that day. Okay. Now, as I said in the beginning, I don't want to extend this a lot in mention just molecular, neurostructural, or genetical aspects of this. The idea is to make clear that a small habit can impact and produce a big resilience, as I wrote this in this slide. Walking, crazy good, insane good. For example, in Asia, in a university in Japan, also in Korea, they are very good in doing studies of walking, and has been shown that, for example, fast walking, that is for when you have the capacities to be able to do it, can be even have the effect equivalent to a person that is running constantly, you know. And that's why I wanted to be reiterative with this and repetitive, sorry. Like you don't need to be a triathlete, you don't need to be a football player or whatever is your sport of preference, or even if you don't have a sport of preference, you know, you should just move is really important. The most of the people, for example, because I don't want to say the 100%, but the most of the people that is studying the university, probably they could walk a long time, I mean, a long distance from wherever they arrive to the university or to the institute, you know. But I saw many people that don't do that. And sometimes it's not because they can't or there's not time. It's because the routine that we have is so established in us is so strong that we sometimes we don't. It's not that, as I mentioned, that it's not that we can or we don't want to. It's like that we just follow that routine, and then we don't see that probably it will be better or even nicer for me to walk to work in. Of course, depending where you are. No, it's just an example. I hear in Göttingen, and I'm based in Göttingen, and the train station is nearby the university. But you can imagine the number of people that take the bus just to go there, and it's like you should work, you can walk, and that, for example, is a change in your habits, is a change in your routine that could have a high impact in your well-being. Second, the sleep. I know that it's difficult. I mentioned that I'm not living in a bubble, that we are scientists, that we need to do experiments, that we have different circumstances in life that will impact this or will make it easier or not to have 6, 7, or 8 hours of sleep. But as I said, like if we consider the lack of sleep as a biological suicide, the impact that have in our organism should be a priority and not the opposite. I mean, we should have those organizations to fix or a schedule of sleep. That will be a priority for us, because in that way we can function in an optimal way for the rest of the day and for the rest of our life. And lastly, the nutrition aspects that we were mentioned here. There are many ingredients. I thought to mention a list of ingredients, but as I said to you, I know that do different cultures, we have different preferences and different things that we like. I will just recommend that, as I mentioned in some point, that if you check some of the literature that is supporting different ingredients, then you can adapt with the specific preparations that you like, and then you can take some of those ingredients. For example, I mean, fermented food in general, I don't know, you can choose whatever you prefer, or even if maybe you don't like, but you can combine with other things. Fermented foods is really, really good, produce very, very important benefits. Omega-3, as it was mentioned there. What else? Fruits, of course, vegetables, all those things that, people will say that's obvious. Yeah, it's obvious, but we should adapt it to our nutrition, to our balanced nutrition, and not being extreme. As I said, if you like fast food, I don't know, once a month. I mean, we need to also try to reduce. No, I mean, I'm not going to say that you don't need to eat it, but yeah, of course, we should reduce it. And now during this season, that when you have so many things that are full of sugar or all that, also, you don't need to be like, say, I'm not going to eat that because it's bad for us. I mean, you will be probably one of the few during the season or in the family. That's why you also need to be capable to adapt, to know that these certain exceptions during holidays or you visit at the family is not the end of the world. That is very important. That's a wise thinking, actually, when you integrate the trifecta in your life. A wise perspective of this to integrate the trifecta is that you are not extreme, that you know that there is exceptions, that there are situations where you will not be capable of sleep the 6 hours. You will not be capable to do certain physical activity or to eat whatever you wanted to eat to keep this balance. However, if you had this as your rule, and those are deceptions, that is what we expected. That is what we expect to achieve. That deceptions are when you are not sleeping well. Deception is when you are not moving too much. Deception is when you are eating something that maybe not contributes so well to your organism. Those are the exceptions. But the exceptions are not null or not zero. They exist. And that's why I'm mentioning it to you, that we hope those will be the exceptions. And then your perception of life, to put the rule in this trifecta, to keep the activity, to keep the nutrition, to keep the low levels of stress when you can, no? And with that, I wanted to give you the thanks to you for being here. I know sometimes it's hard when it's in the morning, and actually, because I was mentioned today about this, probably some of us didn't sleep very well, or not even taking a breakfast or whatever, which also is affecting the attention and the well-being in general. However, because this will be accessible from YouTube, you can check it and just time in a time try to practice this. And as I assure you, If you practice this, if you try to integrate the trifecta in your life, without a doubt, you will see in very short term an improvement in your well-being. And for those interested, you can see there in the slides is my webpage, where I also share the current research that I'm doing. And I mentioned there, I'm focusing this trifecta, actually. My work as a researcher in Max Planck is also focused on this. And that's why I like to show this to the community and give it simple like advices, examples, ideas, how to integrate this in your life. And finally, there you have this list of references, which is the different papers with every link of access. Then you can read it and have fun when you want. And now I think we can also maybe discuss some minutes or reply some of the questions that you have in the chat.